Hey, Jay.
Hey, good morning, Natalie.
How are you doing?
I am wonderful.
I was thinking that today, Thursday, also
Oh,
known as Thirsty Thursday, so I have my big giant water
uh,
bottle. I wonder if I should say Stanley. Dear Stanley, please sponsor us. We know you have the money. We've seen the social media insanity. I'm going to drink some right now.
but they weren't popular for years. And Dad had one of those, like the
He had that
Stanley.
ugly green one.
Yeah, yeah, but it was like, 40 years ago. And
But
then it
we're not,
wasn't cool.
but we're
But
not
yeah,
here
okay,
to
go ahead.
talk about Stanley,
Unless they want to sponsor us.
unless they want to sponsor us, and
Yes.
we're shameless.
Yeah, that's true.
But let's talk about caregiving because we have the best person today. I
True.
think everybody's the best
I
though.
know.
I just love everyone.
It's true. You are very lovey.
Well, and it's true.
Yeah.
And so I let's talk about Jill because Jill is woo, she's
She's
got
the
the
one that showed up
caregiving.
today. We're so
She did
excited.
technically she did show up. And so we're very excited. Okay, and she's from the land of cheese and Miralax.
Yes. And just be quiet. I'm going to get on this intro because
Okay,
you've got us off track already. We have a
sorry.
limited time here. Okay, Jill, we're going to get serious now because you have like an amazing story, which I absolutely love. So today we have with us Jill Meyer-Lippert, and she's a registered dental hygienist. She's the founder of Side Effect Support LLC. Now, if you've ever cared for someone either with a terminal illness or chronic illness or it's just anyone, there's side effects from the illness itself or from medication. So we're going to learn about this later. So just do
Hold
not go
tight.
away.
Hold tight.
How she got to that destination, I would say her purpose is really an amazing story of care. So her story unfolds at birth. So
Mm.
that
Don't give it
she's like
away.
that person. She grew up with a grandmother diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
You're giving it all away.
Right next door, she supported her mother through cancer and moved back home to care for her father at his end of life. But Jill's bio, I think, shared bits of humor and wit and
Mm.
resilience and purpose. I see that her caregiving life led her down a path that is changing people's lives and not just her family. Jill, I am so excited that you are here because you have all kinds of nuggets, both personally, because you got some stuff, some after stuff, like
That's
those
right.
medals hanging on your wall.
That's right.
So we're so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. Happy to join
Yeah.
you.
So as Natalie says, Natalie, say it.
Okay, so we're going to talk about your caregiving story. So, start from the beginning. So you were born, but literally you were born into it. Like everybody typically jumps ahead, and your story is of serving really helping to care for multiple people in a variety of ways. So let's start with childhood. Let's start with your grandmother.
All right. Yeah, so my both of my grandfathers passed away within 6 weeks apart from each other while my mom was pregnant with me.
Mm.
And my parents happened to be building a home out in the country at the time. And my mom's mom had already been showing some subtle signs of dementia at that point. So once my grandfather passed away, they actually sectioned a small part of the land off and put a small home up for my grandma so she would live right next to us so she wouldn't be out on the farm, out on the country by herself. So
Mm.
um, it didn't take long then when she was starting to progress. And that was just part of our natural family life. It was taking care of grandma and having to be there. And then as I got older and things progressed, I never knew anything different growing up. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, grade school years, high school years, you're seeing, your friends being cared for by their grandparents and me having to maybe pass up on, going somewhere because I had to stay home with grandma or spend the night with grandma. So I had to be home early or, different things like that. So all of a sudden, as you got a little older, it's like, wow, this isn't how most people live. I guess that's
That's true. That's true. Now you're from Wisconsin, again, the
yes.
land of the cheese. And I know we'd love for Miralax to also. I always joke that it's cheese and Miralax since I love cheese, but we're not going to
Me
go with
too.
what happens with cheese. And so, but Wisconsin's a huge state. I mean, and this is an election year and we know we can see it on the map, but it's a giant state. And so it makes sense that you all had lots of land. And I love that you moved your grandmother in because I'm assuming your grandmother and grandfather had, you said, a farm. And so built a house separately, but close enough. I love that. We all lived, like we lived in the holler. We lived off West Whitaker Holler Road, and all of our family, we could see each other's houses for the most part. It's
It
really
was not odd when you wrote that, it seemed like odd. It was not odd. Like
No, it
all of
wasn't
us
odd. We
lived
were
near
like,
one
oh yeah,
another.
did you have a pond nearby? Because we had 4. And so I think, so what are some of I hear you saying, because you did some things similar to what I did, which was spending the night and that sort of thing. What kind of activities, if you don't mind me asking, how did you support your grandmother?
It was just being there, really. It was just with Alzheimer's, there was times that she would come up with these stories, like, was she wandering around? And you just couldn't leave her alone. There's times that she would be, things would agitate her. You couldn't watch TV because she'd be, why is that man looking in my window? Or she'd go into the bathroom and yell at the mirror because some old lady was looking at her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that agitation. So a lot of it was just being there, talking with her, keeping her company, and yeah, just making sure she was safe. I think those were the biggest things.
Did your parents, hold on, I've got one more question, Shay. Did your parents talk to you about what was going on with your grandmother as you continued to move forward as aging process yourself?
I think it was not really. It was just part of life, and we were all just trying to figure it out as you went. Because Alzheimer's, even back then, I'm 53, so you didn't really know that much about it, and every day was a surprise, and it was something that was so interesting because she would have these moments of clarity, and be really good for part of the day, and all of a sudden, part of the day was just night and day difference. You just never knew what you're going to get.
Yeah. No, that was my question, Ellie. Good job. Because Jill and I are about the same age, and she looks much younger. And
that is facts. I don't want to talk about Botox,
but that was kind of my question, because I know there were years there where Alzheimer's was just, it's a natural progression. Oh, they're just getting older, but the signs are significantly different. But there were years that nobody really, you didn't know what it was, it was aging. Right. So that was my question was, did you really, that diagnosis did come with, a handbook, and it didn't.
No. And it's amazing now when I look back, I remember some of the recommendations that the doctor would give would be like, always bring them back into reality. And even when I was younger, I thought, well, this is dumb. Why are we doing this to her? Because, she would ask sometimes multiple times a day when my grandpa was going to be home.
Yeah.
And with the recommendation, they were always like, no, you have to remind her he passed away. Well, she was going through that grief over and over and over. And, I was probably one of the only ones and like, oh, he'll be home later.
Yeah.
And she's like, okay. And she was going to forget and ask, an hour later, why are we making her relive this over and over? So I personally think that it was just easier to appease her, make her happy, and just let her move on, and don't worry if she's not living in our reality. That's okay.
Yeah. Let her live in hers. Absolutely.
Well, and we heard that from Marty, our friend. Governor Schreiber talked about he had to go into his wife's world as opposed to try to keep her in his, because it created so much distress. And so I think clearly you were very wise beyond your years, because you're right. Some things are just like, this doesn't seem like common sense. Like, why would I do this and create pain? So now we're going to move a little bit fast forward, because it sounds like there was elements of supporting your grandmother, and you graduate from high school, go on to college. And so then what happens?
You started a life. You
started.
kind of
like you had a life. That was neat.
Almost. No.
Almost. All right. You're like, well, this is what I know life to be.
Yeah, so I moved out to my first apartment and was
Mhm.
beginning classes to be a dental hygienist.
Mhm.
And at that same time, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So her diagnosis, she had a mastectomy, and she was supposed to have 6 months of chemo, and it ended up being extended to 7 months because of delays with complications. But my new apartment was, I would say, not quite an hour away, but
Yeah.
I was going to school full time. I was working two part-time jobs to pay for my schooling and to live,
Yeah.
and then trying to drive home between classes, drive home on the weekends or whenever I had a night that I could spend, that I could be there and help during the difficult times. Because anybody that has had a loved one that goes through chemo is kind of a roller coaster again,
Yeah.
where, after those treatments, you're going to have that times where it's really rough, and then they'll start to slowly get better. And by the time they feel better, it's just in time for that next treatment and go through the whole thing again. So just going back sometimes, even just for an hour or two, and then drive back and go to my next class or go to my work or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was a lot during those months for sure.
Do you feel like when you went back, I mean, I know your dad is there and he's a definitely boots on the ground. He's there constantly. Do
Mhm.
you feel like it was important for you to actually be physically caregiving, or was it just that companionship with your mom? Because you said that about your grandmother. Do you feel like it was being there, if it was the hour just to be there with her, was just as important as caring for her physically?
I think so. Yeah. And I think she was so sick with her chemo that
Mhm.
it was just scary. It was a scary experience.
Yeah.
And it was many times that he thought, boy, is this going to be it?
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't want to not be around for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now, you said that there were times there with side effects, because I know you had, this is kind of where you started seeing side effects. I think that was, is that correct? Where you started seeing things from the chemo that kind of triggered your, hey,
Unexpected.
what's going on?
Yes. So I had an aunt that had also passed away from cancer prior
Yeah.
to my mom, that I knew she had a lot of terrible side effects from
Yeah.
her chemotherapy. But then when they saw it with my mom again, one of the side effects that really um, she struggled with was problems in her mouth.
Hmm.
And, her mouth was super dry, like she would choke because her tissue was so dry, it would like stick together. And she had
Wow.
these massive mouth sores. And I just remember her saying that, even though she had no hair, she had no eyelashes, she felt nauseous and tired. For her, the problems in her mouth was one of the biggest things, because it was so painful.
Yeah.
So I remember her going to her doctor appointment, and she was kind of anxious to go and say, I'm so excited to ask them, what can I do? And get some relief from this. And they just kind of shrugged their shoulders and they said, well, it's just part of treatments. You just need to deal with it. And it just made me so angry, because I felt like she was being dismissed. But, um, now that I was in dentistry, I thought I'd easily be able to find all these answers for her, because it's the mouth, you would
Yeah.
think that we would know what to do. And then I found out that wasn't the case either. So
Mm.
it just started me on this journey. I wanted
Yeah.
to learn more, and I wanted to try to help her at the time. But even if I couldn't help her, um, I knew I could help somebody with it someday. I'm going to have patients that come through with with cancer, or I'm going to have other family members or friends or what have you. And I wanted to find those answers. It just felt like it was such a gap in care,
Hmm.
and it just felt unacceptable to me that we were okay letting people suffer, and just shrugging our shoulders and saying, "Oh, it's just part of it." It's not. I always say it's not about survival. It's about having quality of life too during the process as much as possible, and through survivorship years.
Yeah. So
Mm.
she's got a fire in her belly, Natalie. She's
I
got the
know.
passion. That's when it starts.
Well, and
Yep.
there's a tie to be able to say, okay, maybe I can do something, because this is
Mhm.
about being able to do something. That's probably has been my biggest frustration in trying to support Jason and how we support our mom is, what can we do to kind of move the needle to make life. And you're right about not just survivorship, because people are like, oh, you survived. And you're like, and I will tell you, Jason has dry mouth because his salivary glands are burned up and from the radiation and chemotherapy. And I was so surprised when I met Jill because your mom had did not have a head and neck cancer. She had breast cancer and then she had dry mouth because of that. I would have thought I would have not thought of that as a side effect. And the fact that she has mouth sores is very interesting to me because I would have just expected it from a specific type of head and neck cancer. And so I know that Jason and I work, I'm searching the internet looking as his caregiver, I'm searching the internet looking for anything I can find. And there's even today, there's still some limited products. We'll get into that later, but I feel you on that one. So let me ask you this. It's you and your sister? You have, how many siblings do you have?
And sister.
Okay. And so, but your grandmother came from many. She had,
my mom had 10, she was one of 10 siblings.
yeah. Because I remember seeing that and I was like, oh, look, your mom. And then your mom was like, well, I think I'll just have 2. I'm good.
Yes, I have over 30 some first cousins on that side alone. So, and I'm one of the younger ones. So some of my second cousins, like my cousins' children, are my age. So it's quite a big family. My husband and I started dating in high school, and I always joke that I'm like, well, you're the only one I wasn't related to. So congratulations. You
gotta love a rural community. Just gotta make sure the tree doesn't go straight up. So you're caring for your mom. You're going back and forth. And so what are the conversations like with you and your sister? Like how are we caring for mom? How are we supporting dad? Like your role in, like, how much did your dad allow for you and your sister? Like, was he like, I've got this, or, hey girls, I could use your help? Like, what was that scenario? How did the relationship dynamics change?
It went pretty well, I think. I don't know, maybe if it was from the experience of caring for grandma, but my mom still continued to work during that time. And she thankfully worked for our doctor. We had a doctor in town, and he was nice enough that if she had some bad days, she could even just go lay down in the back for a little bit. He was very understanding and kind. Yeah. But my dad was self-employed, and his business was attached to our home, so he was able to be there on days too that were bad, and to take her to appointments and be flexible with the schedule, which was really a blessing. But my sister had 2 young girls, very young girls at this time. So, she had her hands full with all of that too. So everybody was just doing what they could, pitching in. And it's funny now when I look back, I guess we just didn't talk about it. You just did it. You just jumped in, did things, and didn't really think much more of it from that.
Yeah. So, Jay, we need to take a break real quick. I just went over our time because I was just so engrossed. So let's take a break real quick and we'll be right back. I don't know about you, but my inbox is always cluttered with useless emails. But there's one I always open: the Confessions of a Reluctant Caregiver newsletter. You may say, Natalie, what makes yours so special? Well, I'm biased, but don't just take my word for it. Here's what our subscribers say they love. First, it comes once per month, and you can read it in under 5 minutes. Next, you'll find amazing tips and resources to use in your everyday life. And who doesn't love a recommendation? These sisters do, which is why we share sister-approved products and discount links to save you time and money. And of course, you're first to know about the upcoming month's confessions. Just like our show, you're guaranteed to relate, be inspired, leave with helpful tips and resources, and of course, laugh. Go to our website, confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com, to sign up for our newsletter today.
All right, Natalie, we're back here with Jill, and she just reminded us sometimes there's no communication needed in families. They just jump in and do what needs to be done, which is true. Sometimes you just do it. So, Jill, when your mom, I know she was given a clean bill of health, no cancer detected. Is that correct at a certain point after her diagnosis?
Yes, she will be turning 86 this year.
That's
So
Wow.
what
she
I thought. Okay.
came
Wow.
through
Happy
everything well.
birthday. So at that point, do you get back to life? You say, okay, I'm going back to school. I'm going back to my life's going.
Yes.
You're like, yes, I'm gonna live
Um,
my 20s out.
right. Yes, and then my dad started getting sick. He originally was diagnosed with a very mild form of leukemia that the doctor had said, you'll never need treatment for it. You'll die of old age before this is ever an issue. But then in the next few years, he just started having one diagnosis after another. He's had some seizures. And then from there, we learned that his thyroid wasn't working. And then all of a sudden, all these autoimmune diseases started coming. He had a lung disease that was the first time I remember. We thought he had pneumonia, and we went around and around, and he was hospitalized for a long time, and nothing was working. He was getting worse and worse. So we had to transfer him to a hospital in Green Bay where they had an infectious disease specialist. And finally, yeah, I remember leaving one night and I thought, he is not going to make it. He was just struggling to breathe so bad. And the next day they put him into a lung biopsy. And they finally were able to figure out what it was from the lung biopsy and put him on this massive doses of prednisone. And I remember when we left the hospital a couple of days after, the doctor actually came in and he said, I thought for sure you were leaving here feet first. He said,
You know, you got to love positivity. Hey, good news. You made it.
I know. The doctor, he just seemed really surprised at himself. Like, wow, we figured this out. I really didn't think this was going to happen. So,
You know, that's inspiring confidence. You know, as a caregiver, you're just like, huh, all right. Well, thanks. You know, let me ask you this, because I kind of mentally the timeline, were you in your 20s when your dad got sick, started initially? And because that was a long window of time, was it not?
yes, I think the first time when that happened, when we thought he was going to die, I think I was about 28 at the time. And it was just a whirlwind of doctor visits and hospital stays. And once with the seizures, eventually he lost his ability to drive. So then being able to take him to doctor's appointments. So we would have to schedule his appointments as a dental hygienist, I usually worked Monday through Thursday. I'd have my Fridays. We'd schedule his appointments always on the day or an afternoon that I could take him and be there with him. So it was a long time that finally in 2004, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease. And once he started chemo for that, it was too much for his body to take. And so when I talk about people having side effects, this is where side effects really hit home for me, because it got so bad that every time he went in for treatment, he got so ill that he would be hospitalized. He'd have blood transfusions. He'd be isolated with neutropenic precautions because his white cells were so low. That finally the doctor had sat us down and said, well, we can continue treatments and he will most likely die from the chemo and from the side effects, or you can discontinue treatments, just let the cancer run its course and hopefully give him some quality to whatever life he has left. So as a family, we talked about that, and he wanted to discontinue treatments. So that's what was done. And then a couple months later, then he did pass away from that.
Yeah, but so here's the thing. I'm going to make you go back because you're telling me your dad's story. I need to hear your story. And so during this time, your progression, I mean, this sounds like this 5, 6, 7 years that this went on, as from the time of the initial, like something's going on in your 20s all the way to till his passing. What was the caregiving journey look like for you at that point? Because I feel like with us as well, it evolves. It continued ours continues to evolve. So how did you see that evolution of caregiving for your dad? Because your dad was much longer than your mom.
Yeah. And that was quite a progression, because in the beginning, of course, it is just driving him to appointments or helping him do different things. Like he loved mowing his lawn. You know, he's one of those men that it's like, man, you could take a straight line and every row would be just perfect. And then he couldn't do that anymore because he was on oxygen. And so I'd be out there mowing their lawn, and he'd be standing in the front window looking at me, and I'd be like, you know, you get down to the end of the aisle or the lane, and you turn around and it's like, oh, it's crooked, and he's just shaking his head. So you start out with things like that. And then, you know, it progressed to the point that he couldn't do things for himself. He couldn't bathe himself. He couldn't go to the bathroom by himself. So it progressed to him losing his dignity. Basically, he lost his independence. He lost his dignity, and trying to preserve that as much as possible. And I think for us, I try to at least do it with humor at some point. You know, I always say, you know, be glad you didn't raise some wussy girls that can't do this, you know? So, but he's like, yeah, I suppose so. So
I suppose so. So your mom, because I hear you talking about you, and what was the relationship? How did that dynamic change between you, your mom, and your sister in supporting your dad? Because your dad had your mom, it feels more acute, and even though the acute's not the right word, it was short-term window of time, and your dad is years. And it's the years I feel like that people are like, whoa, that's so long. Because there's those immediacy of caregiving, and you're in this chronic state of stress. And then there's the slow burn that has ebbs and flows of chronic stress, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's a great way of describing it, because that's exactly what it was. Because we were constantly in the hospital. I had my hospital to-go bag, constantly packed, because you just never knew when you were going to need it. And it just became a way of life for us. Again, I can't even tell you how many holidays we spent in the hospital. We'd bring our crock pots to the hospital and set them up on Christmas and take over the Christmas tree at the end of the hallway. You know, it just was a way of life for us. And we got to know so many of the nursing staff and people in the hospital. It almost became our second home.
I'm looking at
You
JJ
said
because
that with your dad, you moved in with them. So it went from you were still able to work and make that transition back during those years to you and your sister she still had the two kids, and she was close in proximity.
She was close, yeah.
Yeah.
They live in the same small town, and I live in another small town not too far away. But then, yeah, towards the end, when my dad was getting really bad, and especially when we knew that we were discontinuing treatments and this was going to be it, my sister, her two girls, and myself basically moved back in with them, and that we could be there, because it was exhausting. It was absolutely exhausting just trying to be there with him through the night, because he had a lot of pain and he was weak, and we needed to be right there. So there were weeks that I actually slept on the living room floor, because he wanted to sleep in the recliner. It was easier for him to breathe in there. So I would just sleep. My sister and I would both sleep on the floor, and then he'd wake up, and you'd have to be there and kind of hold him and help him change positions and things like that. So again, you just go through the motions sometimes.
You know, a lot of people say that that's hard to do for a parent, that it's difficult to take on that role. How did that work for you? Because you've totally switched roles to the caregiver. Were you still a daughter, or did you really look at it as, how did that work for you, Jill?
Honestly, I think it's just going on autopilot.
Really?
Going on autopilot. I think, though, I just remember him at times looking at me and being like, you know, how long do you think this is going to last? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to see them suffer and not be able to help.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I read that, and this is where some humor comes in, is that you were designated the wiper. And I read that and I thought, God, you're a better person than me. And because could you explain just a little bit about the wiper?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, towards the end, he was so weak and he just lost the ability to do basic things by himself. And when it came to, having to go on the toilet, and I took on that role, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do this and no big deal, always kind of making it
Right.
easy as we could be. But then I realized, I think he didn't want to spread that duty around to other people. So I remember coming home from work and my mom and sister are like, oh, good, you're back. I'm like, why? Because he's waiting for you. He doesn't want anybody else to wait for him. I'm like,
Oh, thanks.
So yes, I became the wiper officially.
Oh, that is a daughter honor, though, but I love how you guys have really taken on the thought, and you did mention that in your bio, was that there was a lot of it that was about dignity. And I know that it would, even looking at our own life, sometimes it's different when we care for our mom versus if we had to care for our dad. And I think preserving that dignity would have been very different with him, with our mom, because it's just different. Our relationship, of course, is different with her. We've always, been really close. We've, changed clothes together, all that kind of dressing
We've all
rooms.
been in the dressing room together, and it doesn't actually matter.
But I think that is really an honorable thing to be able to preserve that dignity. We would have done that with humor as well. That's the best way for us to do it as well. But that's really an honorable thing to be able to do, and to be designated the wiper, that he waits on you. I really like that, Jill.
That's pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie to you. It is. Okay. So Jay, this is the perfect place to take a break. And so we'll come right back. Hey ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the US and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing.
All right, we're back, Natalie, with Jill. If you did not hear our wiper story, just put it in reverse.
Just rewind.
Just go back and listen, and then we're going to jump right back in.
And I think that, and I just kind of the quick recap, we were talking about dignity and how do we preserve dignity, and how do we, and then, and Jill, I think you really found that you're the oldest sister. You're the oldest of the siblings, right? Or are you the baby?
Oh, I am the baby.
Oh, we normally establish that right up front so we can really kind of mentally and emotionally prepare for that.
Oh, I always cheer for the oldest. I mean,
I would have thought you were the oldest.
Yeah,
I would have.
No, I'm the more the trouble child. You know how the baby, the baby always causes a little bit more ruckus in life. That's probably.
I wish Emily was
there
here.
Were no rules. Yeah, I wish Emily was here. She'd be like,
tired.
Yes, baby
like,
power.
Exactly. Well, and mom and dad were just tired by the time they got to Emily, and so.
So I'm sorry, Natalie. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So you lost your dad at an early age, or what I feel like is an early age. You were 35. So I lost dad, I was 38. And so I know that kind of changed the trajectory of my life significantly. So I know after that, there's a certain period of grief. I looked at grief before and after. What is the path? Like, what happened with that? What did you, I guess, do with that? What did that do to you? Like, how did you handle that?
I think for me, seeing him lose his ability to do so much for such a long time, it always struck me as like, man, when I'm someday laying on that deathbed and I look back, what do I want to see? Mm-hmm. And I want to start doing things, experiencing things. And I had started running while he was still sick, which I would recommend to anybody that if you are going through things, physical activity is a lifesaver in so many ways. But I had gotten a postcard while he was in his final weeks, advertising the recruitment meeting for something called Team in Training. It is a section of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society that will train you to do an endurance event in exchange for fundraising. And I remember thinking, wow, this seems like a sign, because here he has leukemia, he's dying of lymphoma, and they could train me to do something really cool. I could raise money for other families that are going to deal with stuff like this. And he passed away on March 18th. And by April 6th, I believe it was, I was in a meeting for Team in Training and signed up to run my very first marathon in Chicago that October. And I went right into marathon training mode. And that was a great way to take a lot of frustration, take a lot of sorrow, and just run it out. And realize, there's so many times that I did not want to go on that training run, and I didn't want to go running in the rain or get up extra early to go get those miles in. But there was always that reminder that, yeah, people that are going through cancer and going through these things, they don't have that choice.
That's right.
And I should be grateful that my body has the ability to do this and not waste that. So once I did that marathon, it was a feeling that is just undescribable. It was so awesome. And it started a feeling in me that I wanted to keep repeating. So I started getting into more events and did more marathons, did a couple ultra marathons, and really, yeah.
You're so awesome. I'm like, I said this before we started, I just run to the refrigerator. That's about the running I'm doing, because I'm like, oh, my knees don't like it. But I just think, oh, the release that you get, the endorphins that you get. That's why I like working out, but I like working out more like in place, like weights and so forth. That's so wonderful. I could see the miles being very therapeutic for you as you're to allow you to process, and you're working through things. And I'm assuming that's how you kind of process some of the grief too, with the loss of your dad.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Gosh, Jay, I can't believe it's already time for sister questions. I'm like, darn it. Don't worry, we will have more. Stick around after we're done. All right. So Jay, it's time for sister questions.
Well, I have to ask, what got you to, this is really a sister question, sort of, but I want to know what you did. So I know about the marathon, but what you did with all this information, because you really had a concern for health and for making things easier for people that were struggling, that were having all these side effects, Jill. So tell me a little bit about your organization.
Yep.
I started a company called Side Effect Support LLC. It is an online resource for cancer patients and family caregivers, and also for healthcare providers to help get the medical and dental providers more on the same page to help reduce oral side effects of treatments.
Yeah. And I think, for all of those side effects, we've talked about cancer, but I think it's important to note it's not just cancer. Mom, for example, has Parkinson's, and I know we've talked to a couple of different people. That's one of her side effects. And the side effect of the dry mouth is that she has excess saliva. It's the most, you would never think about that. And we've talked to her neurologist about it. But your resource is fantastic. So thank you, I think, is a big thing. And we'll have all the information about that in the show notes. So we're spreading the word too, Jill.
Well, and Jill has been a blessing, because I connected with Jill through our friends at Coral, who's a dry mouth spray. It's a device. And because we're constantly seeking solutions for Jason, who will permanently have dry mouth. He permanently has it as a side effect of his radiation. And so that's why it was so interesting to me when you talked about your mom initially having it and having sores and things like that. And I'm like, Wait, that was breast cancer. Why? I wouldn't think that her head would be affected. I mean, besides the hair, we all know that. And so that's like an unexpected thing. And I know that like, there's so many things. Like, I think we undervalue our mouth
Oh, definitely.
and illnesses that can come from it. And so, I don't know if you want to speak to that just a little bit.
Sure. There's something called the oral systemic link.
Mhm.
And we're discovering more and more as time goes on that how connected oral health is to other diseases, and how other diseases affect oral health. It's just both sides of the coin with that. But they are actually linking certain oral bacteria to different types of cancers at increased risk. They're linking it to Alzheimer's disease, to pregnancy complications, to cardiovascular disease, respiratory illnesses. The list is just growing. And as science is advancing, we're figuring out more what those links are exactly. And they're sometimes isolating specific oral bacteria as being the contributor to these things. So it's really going to be exciting as time goes on that we'll be able to take that knowledge, figure out who's going to be most at risk for these problems, figure out other ways of prevention or minimizing their risks, or possibly other treatment options.
I think that's so important. I will tell folks that we are going to be we're looking at doing a training on oral health and how that affects your overall health and wellness, and there'll be more to come on that. But okay, Jay, other sister question that you might have, because I know we wanted to get that part in, or would you like for me to move on?
Just do it. I know that you love your sister questions.
I do love my sister question.
Mine is usually serious, Jill, and then she just breaks the mold. She just
I'm
does it.
Saurus. JJ's very Saurus.
No, no, it can be.
Okay, so this is always my favorite question. And I'm sure I have others. Oh, wait, before I get to that, I want to go to tips. Let's get tipsy for a second.
True.
So, what would be a tip that you would give, or resource besides Side Effect Support? So that's an absolute huge resource, people. So go to the website and make sure it's sideeffectsupport.com and check that out. Important. But what would be one other tip that you have taken away that you could give to someone else?
Honestly, I think it would be, well, number one, physical activity would be huge. Staying active, which is hard as a caregiver. Finding the time to do things for yourself is very hard, but also talking with somebody. I think that's something that's just not a natural thing for my family. We just don't do that. Mm-hmm. And when I look back, especially being a child as a caregiver, having resources for young people who are caregivers, I think is really important, because it's hard enough for adults to understand and appreciate what a caregiver goes through. Yeah. But it's very hard for other children to understand when they've never had to deal with it. And I think that is something that is really important, that kids have that support.
That reminds me of Lorette, our friend who has a book out and on understanding Alzheimer's and as a child from that perspective. And it's a children's book. And so we'll put that in the link too, because that's a really good point, Jill, is how do you help children understand when you have a loved one, their grandparent or their mom, doesn't matter. We had Becca who came on and cared for her mom, and her mom had an illness when she was born. And so she grew up with it. And so it was normal. But the reality is then you start looking around, like when you said, I just started looking around at all the other kids, and I'm like, well, you don't interact with your grandparent the same way. So I think that's really important. Okay. That's the tipsy. What is your favorite guilty pleasure? The thing that you do just for you?
I have to really think about this.
What's the thing you do for just you? Yeah. It's like cheese. I'm sorry, I can't get past the cheese part. I love Wisconsin. Okay. I'm just going to tell you.
I don't know if I consider this a guilty pleasure, but one of the things my husband and I started doing about the last year and a half is we have volunteered at our local humane society, walking shelter dog. And we love it. Absolutely love it. I look forward to it I mean, we try to do it at least once a week. We'll get up, on Saturday, Sunday, and try to put extra time into taking the shelter dogs out. And we've just fallen in love with so many of them, and it's so exciting when they find their homes and you get to kind of follow and see their happiness and the life they deserve.
Oh, I'm gonna tear up on that one. I never tear up because JJ would say I'm like stone cold. And
you're such pet people.
Oh my God, I love you. I'm like, that is so wonderful that's a different way to give back. It's so therapeutic.
Yeah. My phone is full of random dog pictures.
How do you not take them home with you?
Yeah.
Well, we actually took advantage of the crazy housing market and sold our home. And then we banked it and we're renting, and we can't have one now. So that's how we get our pet fix. And that's my excuse, because I know if I would get them, then I probably wouldn't take the time to go walk all the other dogs. And I just think, well, they need that.
Look at that. She's
like always serving. She's always like, I got to take care of somebody.
You never stop of taking care of somebody. I absolutely love that. I could not love that anymore. I do have one more question, because I have time for one more question. What would you tell your younger self? What advice would you give your younger self now being on the other side of it?
I think just to take it in stride, maybe. That it just seemed like it was always just one thing after another, just felt like every time you got up, you got punched down again for those years. And it'll be okay. There's a lesson in everything. And there are ways to take these bad things and make good things come out of them. And I think that was one of my goals, is that I don't like that feeling of being helpless. I want to take control over a situation. So it was very difficult during those times when you do feel so out of control. But with creating Side Effect Support, or creating a volunteer program that I did at a hospital that led into doing Side Effect Support, that was my way, one of my ways of taking control over the situation. And because of that, I'm able to make other people's lives better and make their journey easier.
I'm going to end it right there. Jill, thank you so much for being with us today. You are such a blessing. I feel I love Jill. And I love that you walk the dogs. Daisy, who's right behind me, would love that too. Guys,
I'll send you pictures.
I know, right? You absolutely. Like,
in the show notes, we will have dog pictures.
We'll have dog photos. Guys, thanks so much for joining us today. And until we confess again, we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. That was so good.
Jill, I would take all the dogs home. That would be my weakness. Oh my gosh. What a great, fun thing. Yeah, I never would have thought of that.
My husband's a home inspector, and his company's name is ProView Inc. So I do all the social media, and I created the ProView Pup Spotlight. So whenever we go walk dogs, I take pictures and then I put them on our social media as ProView Pup Spotlight. And we've actually helped to get a few adopted through the post. So that's been really exciting.
Look at you you're caring for two-legged and four-legged. I'm going to tell you right now, you all have not stopped caring. I'm going to tell you, there's so much therapeutic value. You know what I mean? I love animals. I mean, clearly I have these giant photos right behind me of my dogs, and Winston, the bulldog, is in the living room. I just wasn't allowed to bring Daisy, the redhead, into the living room, because he's like, Natalie, there's only so many giant, stupid looking pictures that you can put. And I'm like, really? But I love that. I love the story. I love the stories, how you supported your grandmother. That's so near and dear. I mean, all the story with your mom and your dad, that's a given for me. But your grandmother, I relate to that so much because of how close we were to our grandmother. We're just really, really close to our grandmother, me especially. And being with her and spending the night with her. So that because we didn't have assisted living, you only had, you know what I mean? You only had skilled nursing. Did she ever come in and move into I would say the main house to where you all lived?
No, we always kept her in her house, and we took shifts.
No kidding.
That was a big
Mhm.
thing for our grandmother. Now, if for some odd reason she didn't have someone to stay with her, she would travel to someone else's house, which we were very similar to you. Like we all were so close to one another. But Jill, she would show up with like one of those large brown shopping bags. So she would show up with that, and
And
she
the
had her
leopard.
percolator coffee pot. She would only bring her percolator, and she had this leopard gown, this gown, and
It's
she
a
would
moo.
bring it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so that's, you knew that she was staying with you if she had her coffee pot and her
And the
gown
leopard. We would
and the
always
leopard,
joke about it. We wouldn't be her nightgown. It would be
the
Bird's got the
leopard.
leopard because we called her Bird because there was a bird that got in the back of her in the enclosed porch. And so she was swatting it with a broom. And my cousin said, "Oh, Bird, Bird." And so we started it caught on. And so we'd call her Mama. But then we're like, "Oh, Bird's got her leopard." And so she's on the move.
Oh, so
Yeah,
yeah,
that was so funny. Yeah, that's really important. I
yeah,
think the relationship. We're very lucky. I look at that like we're really lucky to have that
yeah.
relationship.
When you're talking about how close your family lives, the other thing that made me laugh, I was thinking about it. So I caught the kitchen on fire at our
That is
house.
facts.
And it was because I put a lid on I was going to fry chicken nuggets. I was probably 12 or 13 because we always made dinner because our parents worked. And so, we got home from school and dinner was going to be on the table at 5:30. And, but I put a lid on the grease pan. And when I opened the lid,
Oh,
Jill, the fire shoots up. So the only thing I can think of is that I remember my mom always said, don't put water on it. Always put flour, but I didn't know where the flour was. So I walk through the kitchen and the living room and toss it off the deck. And so my grandparents live like just around the pond. They come running, and an uncle, because we all lived together, because they saw smoke coming out
Coming
of
out of
the
our
yard.
house.
And so
funny
that's
that.
how close we all lived. So
Yeah.
it was like, hey, the house is on fire. We don't need to call,
That seems bad. Jim's
Yeah.
gonna be upset.
So yeah, that was our family. So, but I love that. I love that your sister lived across the street and stuff. That was, that was one of the best parts of us growing up. I really like that. But
Yeah.
I think as well for us, that unspoken thing, because there are a lot of families that say, we kind of designate the right person, the person that does the job. But it, for us, it also is just, you step in, you're just like, okay,
Right.
well, you just do it and you don't think about
Hmm.
it. Um, it's just, you just do it. So
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. We're not real open family, I guess. You know,
I
very,
understood.
very stoic, very, you don't talk about things. So
Yeah.
that,
So how's the relationship now? Like with you and your mom and your sister, you guys just keep going? Because I know that you talked a lot about was your mom, if you don't mind me asking, I'm surprised that you took the wiping duty and it wasn't your mom. I would have thought it would have been that. And I didn't know if it was physical, and that's not anything bad.
yeah. Um, I don't know if it just happened like availability at
Mhm.
first when it first started happening.
Yeah.
And then he just didn't want to have more people doing it. I don't know.
Yeah. And your mom kept working. I'm assuming your mom kept working too while your dad was
Yes.
sick.
Mm-hmm. And truly now, and I guess I wouldn't probably wanted to say this on the recording part, but now my sister and I are in a caregiving role with my mom, really, because she can't drive. She's had, she will be 86, and she has a lot of doctor's appointments and has some limitations on things she can do. So it's again kind of going through your schedule, figuring out who's going to take her to which appointment, and take down or put up her Christmas tree, or put up the decorations, or take them down now, or all these little things that you just have to step up and do, I guess.
We'll make sure that's not on
Yeah,
there,
we'll make
Jill.
sure that's cut out.
We'll make sure that's
Yeah.
off. Is it because she doesn't want to recognize it, Jill? Is she's like, I'm fine?
No, I think she knows she's accepting the help better than I thought she would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the day we sold Mom's car. And oh my gosh, because mom was still driving. So,
Which was
and
a
she
bad idea.
was a bad idea. And she was actually recording Facebook Live videos, but
FaceTime.
her phone was in the floorboard on the passenger side. And our pastor called us and was like, there's something going on with your mom. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, you need to get on Facebook. I was like, and it was Facebook Live. And I was like, oh my gosh, because I'm in North
She's
Carolina
driving.
and mom's in Tennessee. And I'm like, somebody. And so the next time we went in, we kind of made that decision. And so at that time, I had a brief discussion with her and I was like, Mom, we got to talk about the driving. And she was like, I'm fine. And I was like, Mom, you're a hazard to other people. We need to talk about this. And then eventually after her illness, the main issue that really caused us to take control of her health in 2019, I was the financial power of attorney, and I had to make the decision. It was that point where we actually had to take control and take the keys. And sometimes people say that family member says, okay, I can't do it, and they hand off the keys. I had to take the keys. And so
That's hard.
it was hard. And she still, because
She's still mad about it.
she's still mad about it.
She can't walk, but she's still mad.
She's still mad about that car.
Because it's this loss of independence. And
Oh,
I think that's the biggest independence and dignity. It's like they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you allow dignity and some level of independence and while still making sure they're safe? I mean, there's so many times where we're like, this is not safe. And they don't, and it's hard to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. It was harder for my dad. I know that. My mom now, I think she just feels physically like not able to. So.
Yeah.
Well, your dad was younger though, too, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was in his, both my parents were a little older when I was born.
Mm-hmm.
He was in his late 30s. She was in her late 20s. So he was in his 70s. So, I mean, that is,
okay.
Still young.
Okay. So that's, yeah. But I mean, not like, our dad passed at 58. And so that was, that makes more sense. So, but I think, I wonder about men versus women. If you think about it, like who's going to hold on to the keys longer, or who's going to want to hold on to that independence a lot longer. I think your mom just says, especially you're right. As she's gotten older, she's like, okay, I'll let the girls help me. We're the girls. That's why I refer to it. I'll let the girls help me. So, Jill, thanks so much for being with us. This is fantastic. I am so excited. We are working. I don't know how much you've talked with Ellen, but we are really working hard to get that 6-part series put together. And definitely having you come on and talking about the side effect of support and talking about different things. And Jason has been trying the different things that you sent us. So thank you.
Oh, good. Hopefully it's something will help a little bit.
The last couple of days have been really bad. And it's funny because it ebbs and flows, how bad it is. And when it's bad, it affects his sleep. When is this? It's like this cycle. It's like one negative thing affects the other, and then it exasperates the other. And so it's like, he's been really hard to, I don't want to say live with, but when he's just not happy. And that doesn't make it like I don't want to live with him, but I mean, it's just hard. And I hate, and there's not a thing I can do about it. And I'm like, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And sometimes I worry that he gets so frustrated that he feels like nothing's going to work. So he doesn't even bother trying.
Right. And that is actually pretty common, that people they give up,
Yeah. And so I feel like, I keep nudging him along like a bull in a china closet. We play bully. We just bull along, but we thank you so much. And then I know we're talking the Lakeland. I know I sent you some information about, I didn't know if you had a chance to talk with your friend or not about.
I did.
Okay.
Actually, she thinks that's some of her team is already going to that.
Okay. The one over, the one 4 hours away, the one over there. Okay,
I think
perfect.
so.
Okay. Because I know that we had talked with Lakeland and I talked to them about possibly doing something. And so they were looking at it, but no, I think that's perfect. So Check and check. Anybody else that you have that you'd recommend, just pass them along to us.
Okay.
And if you think that this would be great, I hope this has been a good experience for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm actually meeting with Ellen later today. So
Awesome. All right, Jill, we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.